Hello and welcome to our monthly Zoom. And usually we discuss topics suggested by iconographers who are our friends or students. And this time it was me who decided to suggest the topic. And I thought it would be good to discuss the question why iconographers should be artists. But I prepared this thing. But at a certain point, I understood that probably it's such a complex complex topic that we rather split it in two. So first, we discussed in the morning with Australians, what is it to be artist versus what is it to be the artisan, so the craftsman. And I think that could be a topic for the whole Zoom, because this is also important, like what kind of memes you're choosing, why you will to be this and not that. And then we'll talk about the iconographers. So I will speak about this, and I begin that way. How can we visually distinguish artist's work from a non-artist or craftsman's work? And I probably will have to suggest you to speak, because it's generally a question which we may be having in our routine life. So how you distinguish artist work from a non-artist work? And maybe some of you would wish to talk before we start. Any thoughts, any considerations? I know, Kelly, no? Sighing, no. Not speaking, just sighing. Okay. Or yes.
No, I think, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
I think, well, non-artist work, like, can you give an example? I mean, I'm trying to think, because sometimes I look at art and I say, is this really art? I mean,
Okay.
there's a question there. And then art.
No, it's slightly different, because here we are about craftsman's work and artist's work, because that's the issue. Because sometimes, yes, there can be a work of art which doesn't look like a work of art, but in this case we talk about visual art versus someone who produces images, but yet we should rather call this work of a craftsman. Yes.
Could you give further definition on that, please, Philip?
Not yet. We are coming to...
It's a tough question.
It is. Okay.
Yeah,
if you have any special opinion, we are happy to hear.
Wait,
or
you know what?
Yes.
I'm going to hear some other opinions, and then maybe I'll come up with something.
But okay, Allah was
pass me over.
raising the hand. Yes.
Let me guess. Maybe my opinion will be silly, but
why not?
I would like to involve everybody in the discussion. My feeling about this is if it is craftsmen, they work to sell this stuff, and they repeat and repeat and repeat. And if they see that something is very popular, they produce it and produce it the same way.
No. It's a question to you. How would you see something and distinguish whether it's work of a craftsman or a visual artist? Point.
From yes. My point of view.
Yes, your personal, I don't know, how you make a decision.
Okay. This is always something totally new perspective at looking on the object and material.
Okay.
I don't know how to describe it. I don't know
good
how
already.
To describe it, but you see a lot of stuff around you, and you consume a lot of stuff, pretty beautiful, but you found something and you understand that the person who was doing this was thinking about this totally different than people used to think about this. And another thing, sometimes it's very attract my attention. They involve the materials, textures, colors, totally different way. And you just stop and you look at this and you understand that, no, this is not something done by like in free time after work, but it is definitely that the artist think about this, and this is like philosophy that is in this object, art object, let's say. Something like that.
Okay, great. I'm happy to hear that. I guess Nan was the first person to unmute herself, and then we listen to Arlen. Sorry, Arlen. Yes?
Okay, I'll be short. I think when I listen to Ala, basically, I think the difference is that an artist has a concept behind the piece, and that concept has an intent to change a person that looks at that, that piece of art. Like they change an attitude, they change a way of seeing the world around them or anything, but there is a concept behind it. But I think the term crafts and everything is not, we shouldn't use it pejoratively. I mean, there's like artists that are beautiful their craftsmanship is, impeccable. And yet it serves the concept behind the art. Whereas, and again, I think there's some beautiful craft pieces that we all, have in our home or something like that, but it doesn't, there's no concept behind it for changing how I see things.
Okay, very good. Very good. I love these words. Thank you, Nan. Thank you very much. Arlen, what you were willing to say?
Yeah, I was thinking that for me, it has to do with whether or not I am moved. Did the concept, the person, they're trying to say something. And if they can say it well enough to involve me and to change me, and, like Nan was saying about changing, and Ala was saying about using different textures or whatever process they use for communicating, I think for me, that determines I guess maybe the level of the art. I don't know how to say it any other way.
Okay, we heard this point about level of the art in the morning, but that was, okay, yeah, that's an interesting point as well. Thank you very much. Okay, any more thoughts before, like, we see pictures? Joan, you're acting very vividly. No, okay.
Acting vividly. I don't have a good response. So I'm confused a little, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know, Shari, or who just can move forward, whatever. If yes.
When I think of craftsmen or non-artists, and I think of things, some of them are just incredibly beautiful. But again, I think with Nan, the intent, the intent behind it, sometimes the craftsman is making beautiful things, beauty for beauty's sake. And an artist may make beautiful things for a different intention.
Yes, totally agree. And also the reasoning or considerations I'm going to suggest you are not an absolute thing. It's just a point of view, a possibility to look at from a certain perspective. And I just hope you may consider this when you will be doing something. So probably can be a nice addition to what you already have. So my proposal would be here to think about visual art as a pure visual communication technique, where meaning is transmitted to our brain directly via a visual channel with no words. Because we accept this as a message and we rather feel it. We do not need to verbalize or to think about it. We can say, okay, here's a fish on a plate with some red background, with some pattern on it, but it's like deciphering music. Someone will tell you, I hear sound of violin together with sound of saxophone and other things like that, which describe the situation, but don't let you feel anything. You don't feel anything when someone is describing the music. The same with art, because here we see a chapel, an image of Christ in the middle, and we can describe him. He is beardless, he has a halo, but our description will never match the effect this image produces on us, because the verbal description is a different impact, and it impacts a different part of our brain. Well, okay, Philip, it's clear that visual is perceived visually, but why are you making all this fuss? What, Philip, you are saying is that there are iconographers who are not artists, and you're trying to convince us that it is not good. But how can you distinguish? So I'm not going to bring forward the usual point about copying or not copying. I think this is a side effect. I will rather suggest you to evaluate the main means artist is using to communicate with us. So evaluate what's the main vehicle for the message the artist is trying to utilize. Can we see in this case that the artist is using some very special and interesting colors? Well, I have cut this image, I can show you the composition, but the way the image is painted also matters for me, because here I'm not sure we can say, or we may, that the artist has produced some very special expression which is moving us, deeply catching our eye and touching our soul. So what artistic means did this artist use to communicate with us visually, to deliver the message directly to our brain? So that would be, I don't know, my question. If you'd like to answer, I'd be happy to hear, because we're speaking about visual art as communication of direct visual impact onto the viewer, onto the beholder. So can we say there is something pure visual he or she was thinking to utilize just to make it visual art, or not? Well, if nobody wants to talk, I can just continue, say some more words, and we have a discussion at the end, because from my impression, what I see, again, I may be wrong, but I have a feeling that artist wants to impress us with his ability to fake pseudo-Byzantine brushstrokes. But for me, the problem is that it's not the imitation in its real understanding. It's an imitation where the author is not trying to understand what he's imitating, why the brushstrokes should be applied in this way, not the other way. Because for him, it's just a set of movements of a brush and number of brushstrokes applied to produce a certain effect he thinks or she thinks is necessary for image to be sold as an icon or fresco or something like that. But when we look at someone who did the same job hundreds of years ago, I would say for them, it was a certain use of instruments which were available for them. Like, what's the main content of the image on the left, the one with the green face? I would say this is a prayerful face, and this artist made it prayerful using the green color to avoid feeling of fleshy, beautiful, nice human body. He didn't want to make a handsome man. He wanted to produce someone looking rather spiritual than terrestrial. And that is why he used Sankir and these highlights and abstracted form of many parts, because he wanted to. On the second one, we see rather flash and blush. We see all the things which we used to see on living humans, but somehow they are attributed or re-attributed to an angel. So we actually do not see a prayerful face, because artists did not think of means which would bring us to a feeling of a prayerful faith. So artist is utilizing means, but means show us what the artist wants to achieve here or there. And sometimes you can say, okay, iconographers are constrained to use gold. Many clients want gold, and there is this idea or stereotype icons have to have gold. It's such a difficult material, but when we look at this picture, we see it's mostly gold. So this is the central part of iconostasis. It's a royal gate, supposedly opening and closing. But if we analyze, it's just gold everywhere, mostly gold. And we see that this artist killed himself, covering everything with gold leaf. But when we look at this, we first of all see the message he was trying to deliver. So we see image of Christ communicating, interacting with the apostles, and we see how each of them is made. We don't see the pride of an artist who was so happy to use 3 kilograms of gold, so he just demonstrates how much he worked. We see artist who is carefully choosing the gestures, gesture of Christ and gestures of apostles, their faces, which sometimes look more realistic, sometimes more childish, but yet we mostly are taken by how this image is created and what it means for us. So he communicates visually what he wants to tell us. Yeah, he creates an image using gold in this case. It's the image first of all. We don't decipher it. We don't think of how many petals of flowers or how many, I don't know, details they have, which could symbolize this or that. No, we are interacting visually directly with this man or woman who worked in, I think, 17th century, 16th century. But then when we come to our days, we see those who work for church very often use the same materials, but they use that material as attribute. So you're supposed to use gold, here is the gold. You want to have marble iconostasis, you produce it as marble because that's what it's supposed to be of. And technically, we can say that what it communicates is a summary of details where each of them is perceived separately. I see 5 pieces of decoration under the icon, under each icon, and I see lots and lots of different little details, which together tell me how much work has been how much work was spent to produce this huge piece of little architecture. But it's not a work of an artist because it's not transforming the world, and there probably is some intention, but not intention to communicate with me visually. It's intention to demonstrate certain things which are supposed to be there. So here is an artist coming to the stage and telling me, I'm supposed to tell you this and this, so I'm telling you this. And that's what I see, actually. These very concrete steps, but not the road which brings me somewhere. I see the trees, but I do not see the forest. And the artist is the one who is supposed, or who is thoughtfully trying to build up the forest out of the trees. That's, again, it's my point of this current lecture, and I think it could be okay. And we do not question the iconographer in his ability or disability to hold the brush and mix color. But it's really the desire to communicate something or not, or to produce details. This old Greek icon, we see lots of colors and figures, and as it is damaged, we see, I would say, pieces of a story or several different essays, each of them having special character, having specific message to deliver. Like each part of this icon has a certain content different from the other. We don't worry how many layers of highlights because we are captured by the desire of this artist to talk to us visually and not to be destructive with anything else. But in many cases, we can speak about artists trying to make their image beautiful. And even in making beautiful, with different details like decorative, I don't know, gesso, engraving, relief, they do make it still belong to the image. So their message is still delivered, even though the figure is decorated. Decoration is a part of it. It's not falling into fragments, it's a part of the message. So sometimes people just make decoration to just show you how beautiful it should be, how nice it should look like. And this is the problem. So if you put details just as a summary of details, you probably are not acting as an artist, because you mostly are acting as someone willing to show details. If instead you're trying to deliver the message, and you may sometimes have to use details, decoration, and gold and different things, but still you're successfully delivering the message, mostly visually. First of all, visually, you are the artist. And if you draw details, you probably draw nice replicas, beautiful copies, but not the pieces which are interacting with people directly with their brains. Well, this isn't an icon, but even though I want you to look carefully at the faces and how each of these figures is produced, as they were thought of as expressive possibility to talk to us without necessity to show how good is the gilding and how nicely are folk depicted. So that's the difference. This one is communicating directly, even though you may like or not like the style. He doesn't want you to decipher it. He wants you to enjoy the blue together with the green and how figures stay together and everything else. But not always like that. In this case, I would see details, 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 and details, and the head and the face is somewhere behind, very far behind all these wonderful highlights and shadows. I think that's it. Probably that will be my main point for today, and I'd be happy to hear your thoughts. So what's your main vehicle? What you went to deliver and what you utilize delivering your message? Now it's your turn.
I looking at that and hearing you talk, I feel sometimes that maybe as a student, all of my work focuses on color, line, and just the technique to get it down. And then there has to come a point when we cross over to artist where it's not about that, because we're comfortable with that. We're comfortable with how the colors mix, how we're using the line, we're able to do it. Then we're able to focus more on how is the image we're creating communicating to the viewer.
And yes and no, because from the very beginning, even being very focused on how well you have diluted your highlight color, you still have to think of what effect your highlight will have at the end, how strong you want your highlight to achieve that very result you want as an artist. You may wish a very light highlight, maybe strong and heavy, dramatic or pale. It always depends. So one thing is exercise, but the other thing is how your exercise is turning into something. So yes,
Yes,
actually, that's what it is made for, to set you free, to allow you to choose among hundreds of opportunities you may wish to choose opposed to the other one.
May I try?
Sure. Yes, Howard, thank you. You always throw good stones into our water.
Okay. I'm thinking that the process of teaching, and I'm a teacher, that's why I'm always thinking about this, is to teach everything, do appropriately and control everything and do this, do that. But if to compare this with, for example, language lessons, first of all, grammar, beginning stuff like alphabet and everything, but everything has a target, not to make you to pronounce something clear and right, but this is all about to give you opportunity to express yourself and develop your thoughts in this field, because I speak English and Russian, and I feel I understand that I speak differently when I think in these two languages. This is a lot different stuff. So the same, I think that Olga and Philippe are teaching us everything to do right, but the target is not to, okay, language. I have very interesting example from my language school, from my language teacher, who shared with me the phrase that in Russian and in English, meaning is totally the same. So she told me that she was teaching English students to pronunciate Russian words "Я люблю вас" with
I love
English
you. I mean,
words.
yes.
Yes, I love you. The meaning is I love you, with English words yellow blue bus.
Okay.
Because people couldn't pronounce it, they didn't get it. So for them, it's easy to pronounce it yellow blue bus.
Can you say it again in Russian and then English, one after another?
Yes, so in Russian, "Я люблю вас." In English, yellow blue bus.
That's very cool. Thank you.
And if you would like to, sometimes the message is more clear if your language is not very beautifully developed, but you are very sincere with your emotions. It is difficult for you to find some words to describe the feelings or to pass the message. But the way how you do this, and something that you put inside for your fair, right? Your feelings, true stuff into this couple words, it is more strong than if you make pauses and you articulate it beautifully. People look at this and they don't understand what kind of message you would like to deliver to them, right? So it depends. I see this in these images that Philippe is showing us. It is different, with high quality of artistic skills to do this, but behind this, it is conception, it is philosophy, it is the knowledge and everything, and the own experience that the person would like to pass through the image, and another that everything is behind. Yellow blue bus.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. We often speak about rather people who know how to do in many different ways. So like you're able to do the same job in hundreds of colors and hundreds of shades, and somehow you choose the very particular one for certain reasons. So like what we see, we are able to compare with other examples. And that's the possibility to judge, to understand like why you have chosen this versus that one, which you had on your model. I had my reasons. I had specific reasons. So this, again, is very often the problem of fear, because I see on my model so many details, and I so usually want to repeat them. I am afraid I will not be correct enough to fulfill my job, so I focus on details. But again, if you want to think of visual message these guys wanted to deliver, they were delivering directly. They were choosing the blue, which would function, the red, which would be more pale or stronger, which would speak to our eyes and brain directly. So that's, I don't know, again, I guess there will be hundreds of other opinions, but I feel this in iconography is a just great danger to fall into details. And that probably for me was the point for this lecture. Kelly, unmute yourself, please. I have muted you. Sorry, you had too many different sounds. I have muted you. You have to unmute.
There,
Yes.
okay, now I
Yes.
can talk, okay. Listening to everybody, different thoughts, and Ala was saying, brought to mind being in Greece and going into these small little chapels. There's one chapel that's 1,000 years old in my mother's village called St. Friday. Aya Paraskivi.
Paraskeva.
Paraskivi. And in that little, I mean, this chapel is the size of a bathroom. I mean, you know, a little bathroom. And looking at the images, I had more of an impact and more of a feeling in that little chapel than I did in something enormous and beautiful like St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. I mean, I was impressed, very impressed, but I kept thinking about the simplicity and the emotions extracted from the murals. That's basically it. I think it's, you know, like you can't compare apples and oranges. Mila que portocaladas, you know, like in the Big Fat Greek Wedding, they gave that example. Anyway, so that's kind of how I'm viewing all of this. You know, I think craftsmanship, yes, is beautiful. Yes, but the humbleism and the simplicity, I think, speaks more than the grandiose expression of what, you know, an artist is trying to imply to the viewer. That's all. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Well, it's probably about the means which can be modest, but yet deliver a lot. And when we may be overwhelmed by the amount of information, we probably can't, I don't know, feel as clearly something concrete as when we are in a more quiet situation. So I'm totally with you. But it's about somebody else's work. I'm talking about what we are trying to produce and how we can find some guidelines to move forward. And I always have this temptation to like understand, okay, I have to produce this brush stroke, oh, I'm sorry, this, I don't know, I have invented certain type of highlights and I make them and I feel, oh, I've done such a good job. But at the end you look, you say, wow, these highlights are too busy. They don't work with the rest of the image. But you've spent 5 hours doing that. So it's question of always stopping yourself, constraining yourself, or switching yourself instead of like producing the job done, having the job done. You just have to think what kind of job you need to do. And this is difficult because I guess hundreds of generations before us were simply supposed to perform certain routine activities to survive, to have enough food. So they were taught to switch the brain off, or as neurologists say, it's such a most hungry part of the body, which eats 20% of our energy. So once it's no more need to continue thinking, the brain is switched off. And it's just part of evolution, I guess. So it's really a hard job to keep our brain thinking all the time we are painting or drawing, because we do need continuous control. And yet the evolution says, no, you have just decided what you're doing, switch it off, just do it. Like driving, you're not always fully, I don't know, feeling yourself in this driving situation because you know how to do it. You can think about something else. So the same about drawing, we go on routine, we go on our usual understanding, like, okay, here is the plan, I go follow the plan. And the very fact that every moment of this plan, you have to check yourself, and, is it the right thing I'm doing? Okay, right. Is it still right thing I'm doing? Yes, okay. It is still okay. So that is difficult, but that's the one which can really make the impact, as Allah said and Nan mentioned, that the ones which change the viewer's point of view, as Arlene was saying, the ones which transform our understanding, the ones with the concept which make you feel certain things. And I'm not sure I will have to, I don't know, advertise our previous Zoom for everybody to watch, but I'll be happy to cite one of the two phrases one of the Zoom participants just mentioned in the morning. He mentioned a book where he said the title was "Here Comes the Poet." I probably think some of you may know that. And he says the book is about, it's a philosopher's book about lots of professions, which he describes from philosopher's point of view. And at the end comes the poet who gives the very exact word for each concrete meaning in the world. The person who indicates the possibility to communicate, appointing or appropriating specific meaning to everything, to every object. And he said that would be case for science, for any kind of studies, but for poetry, we can also say in an opposite way, because if you read in science, every object has to have a name, but in poetry, every name can expand to lots and lots of meanings. So if you read something as a poetry, you feel it as a picture built up with words. And from one side, this picture is very intimate and individual. But from the other hand, the situation described in poetry is usually a global one. So every part of it is opening into the universe. I just like this idea. So how the word can be very concrete and how it can be opening up. So I guess the same about working constantly in visual, because if you find a meaningful color, meaningful position, meaningful way of producing your piece of art, it will be revealing a universe for someone who would look at it. Visually, you don't have to verbalize. It just will reopen it in your visual abilities. Sorry for talking so much. Allah is raising her hand. Yes.
And also sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Sense of humor, because even in very serious masterpieces, you can find this sense of humor. It's interesting how he did it. It is funny. It is so simple. I cannot even imagine that this very serious part should be made this silly and not very serious. And the same with poetry. You know, I open something for you that I've read a lot of poems, and as a child, I was learning to my heart a lot of different Pushkin and not only poems, but I didn't feel that this is something special. Absolutely not. And since I start to be more and more interested in icons and iconography and this visual, I get it right away. I noticed to myself that I need not read with my eyes this. I need to pronunciate it and speak out loudly, and I start to understand poems and poets different way, and I start to enjoy it. Before it was like necessary to learn at school. Okay, something like this. After this, I start to understand this another behind level of it. I think like that. Okay, sorry.
No, that's cool. Thank you.
So
Thank you for
sense of
sharing.
humor is, even visual humor is very important.
Yes, I'm
Masterpiece.
with you.
If
Yes.
you see something like Craftsman's made maybe humor, but it will be like something obviously and some funny, but it is the way how it was made. Some brush strokes are what?
Delicate humor. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, any other thoughts? Any critique or objections? If visual artists have to just communicate visually, or they probably can speak sometimes. Sarah, yes?
Yeah, I was thinking about the examples that you showed us. And I was thinking that every single one of those communicated something, and very likely something that the artist intended, or the people who commissioned it intended, probably more likely. And they might not be what we think should be communicated through iconography, but they still communicate something. So I was thinking about especially the golden iconostasis that you showed us in the beginning. And what's the first thing you notice is that it's completely gold. And what does that tell us? You know, when you walk in and see a golden iconostasis, you know, that might speak of power, of wealth, of influence. And that might be what they were trying to say. And I'm not saying that was good, but that anything that we do artistically, it communicates. The very precise lines that you showed us of the newer versions of some of the icons, maybe what they're trying to communicate is that, look, we are preserving what we think is a tradition in the way that we think it should be preserved. Look how well we did it. You know, again, like I said, you know, we're dealing with something that we're having to think through. Is that what we want to communicate or not as an iconographer? But just whatever we do does communicate things to people around us, to people in general. You know, if I do choose to use a ton of gold in my icons, what does that mean? You know, someone might tell me, you need to do this. This is the appropriate thing to do. Well, they have a reason for telling you that too. And do I want to go with their reason, or do I want to go with the one that I'm, you know, trying to figure out? So that was just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, very good ones. Very good ones. I'm totally with you. So no, the point was that very often, even when we think we communicate visually, we just do certain actions we think is necessary to, but we do not communicate visually. That's what I'm saying. So we think we deliver the message directly visually, but we just send some words which we hope have to produce a specific result. That's my point. And when the artist is making a piece of visual art, he or she is thinking of not which words he has to pronounce, or she, but what the final impact is supposed to be, I don't know, produced, and chooses the means accordingly. That's what I'm trying to say. So very often people taking the model are afraid of hundreds of words they see in this text, which they will have to rewrite with their brushes. And that's what they do. They just rewrite what they read on the model. But technically, the guy who produced the model had no other options at the time. It was his school, it was his approach. He was part of the culture in which drawing or painting an image of Christ is done that way. So the area in which he could have some personal choices was very little. But the whole body of his work, the whole school he belongs or she belongs to, would be the school of delivering the visual message. They were just sophisticated rules to follow, but when we open some ancient authors who would be writing, they would also have sophisticated rules to follow because they were guys of very sophisticated taste. They had a certain culture and you had to correspond to it. In our time, it's much more simplified. We don't have such a high taste. We only are much more I don't know, poorer followers, the descendants. And what we know how to repeat. But I'm trying to bring back this main goal. Guys, if you are repeating, try to understand what you're repeating. If you are coming to the stage and saying some words, make sure these words mean something for you. Make sure these words are having an impact on those you're talking to. That's it. You can copy perfectly well if you think this line is best and this color is best. So that's how you deliver it. Otherwise, it's not visual art. It's really, you consider yourself the one who produces images, the one who produces this kind of visual product, which supposedly has to have this impact. Okay, so again, it's not judging, it's just considering different approaches. Like if you want to make the impact, make it. If you want to produce a copy, make a copy, but don't think this is automatically functioning. It doesn't. So sad. Allah, yes.
Yeah, this is like we do not speak languages that people speak in 18th century. We do not express ourselves like people express in medieval times. So the language is changed, and the only thing that is not changed is the message that we need to deliver. But the language and expressions can be different. And if think about yes, this is not my thoughts. This is something that I share, and I got it from you, Philippe, and the books, and from the journal Dary.
Gifts, the almanac gifts.
Yeah. The article about that. Could you imagine historical place and historical time when no electricity, no advertising, and no cars, and no like this, and then you are doing this picture, and the reason is that this is no electricity, no cars, no this visual experience like we have. That's why we need to speak about this or deliver this message different way, because different situations. And for example, if Kelly told about this chapel, it was a forest and simple village, and something simple around, and tada, this is chapel with all of these images. How people will accept this information, even if it is done with a not very famous or skilled artist. And totally different situation. We have all this advertising, we have a lot of visual experience through the computer. What kind of image should be to attract your attention? I think, this is my opinion, and not only my think, the simplicity, simple textures, simple lines, and lines should not cover that it was done by human. It should be done very simple and very alive, rather than these pictures that go through Photoshop and other stuff to make it perfect. Yeah. Because we used to look at this perfect beauty, and we don't trust it anymore.
So let's
That's
produce
why
not perfect beauty. Okay.
Yeah.
A new trend. You're introducing a new trend. Imperfectness in beauty forever.
Yeah.
So who was the architect, I think in the 20th century, who said less is more? Philip Johnson, who was that?
I'm an
Mies
ignorant
Somebody.
van
person.
der Rohe.
Thank
I
you.
think it was me.
Miss van der Rohe.
Rohe.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. Less is more. I think that's what you're saying, Allah. And if I'm hearing you right, Philip, is that what? If that's what you're saying, that resonates. That makes sense. But my personal struggle is trying to find that language. You know, I still have to struggle with even the copy, you know, and I hear you saying, but you have to go beyond that and maybe trust yourself. But is trying to find that visual language is the challenge for me.
May I share something? Some of you know that I'm a teacher and I teach kids, and I have art classes, and I teach different techniques. I show them how different media works on paper, on canvas, and that's it. And sometimes kids copy some famous masterpieces. Sometimes we make some still life on a table, and we draw this to get how to do this. And like I have a courses like dry media, and at the end of the course I usually do a free choice lesson. And this is necessary part for me because I'm testing them how they get this technique. Another thing, what they prefer, what colors they prefer, what kind of media they prefer. And also, I tell them, you know, I just show you how you should use this media. But when you have free choice lesson, break the rules. Break the rules. Why? Because this is make mistakes, because this is the only way to get the language, to make mistakes. Wow, yeah. Good.
It was part of the lecture, but I decided we just
Yeah, it's good, it's good. So when we start, when we try to pronunciate everything, when we try to speak clear, this is good. But actually, when we try to, when we get the language, when we can pass the message, your feelings or your thoughts, and then you start to use your personal stuff, your background, something
Interesting.
personal into
Yeah.
it.
Arlene, yes.
When we use the word copy, I'm already translating it in my brain because when you say copy, I want to say interpret. And so, yes, the skills for application need to be taught and need to be developed. However, once I have that, it's my interpretation. It's what I'm trying to say. And communication is the word that just keeps coming back to me over and over with all of our discussion today. And the one icon that you showed us that had the modern version of all of the veil in Mary and all that. I mean, none of those speak to me. You know, I can't get past. I can't get past the decorations, and I just get stuck there. Yeah, I can't get to Mary. You know, I can't get to the prayerful experience that I'm looking for in an icon.
Right.
You know, and so that's, yeah. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Sarah, yes.
Arlene, I wanted to respond to that. Do you think that we as in a general, we are not paying attention to the actual person that we are painting? As though, like the one that you showed for an example, that the artist who's painting the one that's the copy, they're copying brushstrokes and lines and colors, and they're forgetting that they're actually doing a portrait of Mary and Christ.
Right.
They do.
Is a possibility.
Well, I go back to I'm very new at all of this, okay? So I've started from the beginning drawing classes, and I'm still working in the drawing classes, but in one of my classes, I was supposed to be doing a basic presentation and, send that to Olga. But what happened when I was doing the basic presentation, it's a portrait of Jesus, and I got to the eyes and I just got lost, and that's ended up with being what I showed her, and that was her critique was, you've done the eyes too quickly, because that's supposed to be the end thing, but and that's what happened. But I said, yeah, but that's what happened. And I think that is what happens when we're really into it. And so, yeah, I think that I have a tendency to just go right to the person, who that is, what I'm trying to relate back and forth to the person. The eyes are like, I go through the eyes into this magical, wonderful, holy space. And so everything else doesn't matter. It's like, for me, but I have to discipline myself to kind of like behave myself to make sure that the presentation is there and not just my own personal experience. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question? Because I think for me, I go right to the person and who it is and what what my relationship is with them.
You did answer the question, but I guess John was posing a slightly different question, which I now feel as something important to speak about for a longer time, which would sound for me as, what is the moment, or what should be the level at which the student feels that from copying, from performing the exercises, the student is allowed to do things more individual way. I'm not sure, is it the right way I understood you, John? I'm trying to rephrase, like, from what moment you're allowed to be an artist, to be a creative entity, introducing something of your own into this world of iconography, full of symbols, so rigid, full of canons, etc. So this is the question. But I guess Arlene is answering that after the brushstrokes are produced, when whatever you are painting or drawing or writing, this is already your interpretation.
Right.
So having the basics somewhere in your brain, in your hand, whatever you do is what you really mean. So with your basics, you know how to draw, the nose. You technically are producing images which do communicate visually. And this is the right choice or wrong choice, how many details, how stronger details. It already is part of the learning process as well.
Right. So Joan, I guess I was wondering if that word interpret was helpful to you at all in terms of looking for language and on the journey and the experience. I guess, when I was hearing you, I was wondering, I was trying to join your journey and see if the word interpretation was helpful in any way in your journey.
Yeah, I think it is helpful. And I think it maybe opens another door.
Okay.
Here is the door of the, let's say, the iconostasis, and maybe, opening that door when the priest enters into the holy place.
Yes.
That it's another door. Poor, as is probably a poor analogy. So please forgive me, those of you who are Orthodox.
No, well, why not?
Okay.
Anyway, it's some symbolic space and you're using it with double symbolism, so why not? Okay,
Yeah.
that's no problem. Interesting. Okay then. Well, I think we'll need the more interesting, more detailed, more clear answer to that, because the word interpretation is great, but to feel more self-confident in doing certain things, you should have some like verbal approval from yourself. Like, are you supposed to do that or not?
Yeah.
Is someone expecting you to do it this way or not yet? Or you probably are going too fast. So, okay, that's a good question for the future. I'll keep it in mind. In what moment does the student receive the right to be the unique personality? Well, I guess from the very beginning, but when this very beginning starts, interesting, very interesting. Okay, any more thoughts, considerations, questions we didn't answer for now? Looks like no for now. Okay, then in a second, I'll check the date of our next meeting, if you like, and then we probably should conclude. Okay, just a moment. Newsletter. It was. So it is going to be November 26th. And probably there will be nothing in December. Not sure about January, but so November 26th, we should be having about the same session. And now we'll write the hours, which should probably be more or less the same. I'm not sure about the summertime or even, I don't know, winter time in Georgia. We should have something similar to what we're having now, time-wise.
Philippe?
Yes, Sarah?
I don't know if anyone else has an issue with this. I think most of us are from the US in this group, but the Thursday before that is our Thanksgiving holiday. And so I don't know if people will be traveling or I don't know, maybe we can answer now if that.
So November 26th, you think is not a good day, yes? Hello, Sarah?
I don't know if anyone
Okay
else,
for me.
go ahead. I see people wanting to talk. Go ahead.
No, it's okay
No, that's
for
all
me.
right, Sarah.
No, it's okay. But it sounds like it's not good for you, Sarah.
So November 24th, this is Thanksgiving Day in US. Yes, it's right.
Ah,
So it
okay,
is
I see
long
now. I see now what you
weekend.
mean.
And if it is long weekend, it means that people are traveling.
Well, we can
or
make
having-
3rd of December then. 3rd of December.
What about November 19th?
Okay, let's vote. I guess we can vote. So November 19, who is for November 19? 1, count 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 people for November 19. Okay, and who would be for November 20? December 3rd? Nobody. Okay, November 19. Solved. All right, we'll do it a little earlier. Very well.
So
Thank you
there's
for
no-
joining. Yes, no what?
No, there's no December Zoom. Is that what you're saying?
No, because it's
Okay.
the time for
The
the
holiday.
feast, and yes, lots and lots of movements everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe not. Maybe we'll have something for January rather than for November, but for November, for December, November 19. Okay, good. Thank you for raising the questions. Thank you for answering them and just making the effort. So I love these Zooms because they are just brainstorms for me. So thank you very much for participating. See you in less than a month then.
Good inspiration.
Okay,
Thank you, Philip.
Okay.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Philip.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.